Hello, everyone. Continuing Parents of Preemies Day. We're having a great day. Hope everyone is too. And the comments and shares have been great on social media. So thank you, everyone. And right now we have a great preemie parent, Melissa Harris, who has a preemie and also is a book author. And I'm not going to take away the story. So Melissa, why don't you share your preemie journey, and we'll go from there.
Sure. Thanks for having me on. Really appreciate it. So my preemie journey, I have a former 24-week and 2-dayer. He is now 11. And my journey to a preemie was quite a rocky little ride. I have a 16-year-old who had to be evicted at 42 and a half weeks because she didn't want to leave. And then when it was time for baby number 2, I discovered lots of problems. I had multiple miscarriages. And with the one that I had, he was kind of my last shot. And when I was about 23 weeks and I think 4 days pregnant, I went into labor and went into the hospital. And the next thing I knew, in very rapid form, I was contracting every 2 minutes. I was dilated to 8 centimeters. The gestational sac was coming out, and I was flipped down into Trendelenburg. So head below your feet at a 30-degree angle. And I stayed that way for 6 days, trying to keep Sam where he belonged. With the last, I think, 2 days, I wasn't allowed to move. So if I wanted to rotate, it was like a team of 6 people would come and with blankets and things flip me around. But I made it to that magical 24-week mark, as it was back in 2010, and gave birth. He was 1 pound, 12 ounces at birth and 12 inches long. And funny enough, the title of my book happens to be 1 pound, 12 ounces. Wonder where I got that one from. And, we had a 95-day stay in the NICU. He, considering his early birth, was pretty remarkable in the sense that he really was off the ventilators early. Breathing and his lungs were never an issue. Part of that I attribute to the fact that I got 2 rounds of steroids while in Trendelenburg to kind of help him along. He had ROP and had laser surgery on his eyes. He had a PDA ligation in the NICU, a couple spinal taps, blood transfusions, 8,000 medical tests and things, but came out of there after 95 days in pretty remarkable shape.
It's great. And then from all that, we have a book, which I'm going to add right now.
Oh, yeah. So, it's funny. During my time in the NICU, the book started as a letter. It's a long story. I started it as a letter to my brother, who at the time lived in Southern Africa. And I wanted to sort of be able to tell him what was going on without having to try to talk to him. And I started an email, and it turned into about 5 or 6 pages. And I sent it to him. And he said, Melissa, we have family around the world, and you're going to need to tell this to a lot of people. What if you did a blog and posted everything up there so that family members would know what's going on? And I said, okay, yeah, sure. And I started this blog. And after the first day in the NICU, you come out and you're overwhelmed and everything is just, it's a lot. And so I started writing, and I wrote every single day that Sam was in the NICU, and it was my therapy. It was where I would go and say, okay, this is everything I learned and this is how it felt. And I kind of had a place to release it.
Yeah.
And I did this every single day. And at the end of it, I had all these entries, and a friend of mine who happens to be a bookstore owner had followed the blog and said, this should be a book. There are so many of you out there that this could help, and you're funny and you're honest, and you should put it into a book. And so I started on that process, and it was a journey. But for me, having a place to kind of put my feelings and to work through things without having to work through things was really vital for my mental health. And then also, when I was in it, finding resources was really hard. There are more resources now, including the wonderful app actually that you guys created. but there wasn't a lot. There was the Preemie primer by Dr. Jennifer Gunter, and that was kind of it.
Mhm.
And I wanted someone to be like, listen, this sucks, but it's going to get better. Well, it might suck some more, but it's going to get better. And then it might suck some more. And then it might suck for a long time, but then it'll
Yeah.
get better.
Yes.
Because, I mean, as we all know, this is not easy. This is a hard thing to go through.
Yeah.
And you don't want someone to sugarcoat it for you, and you don't want someone to scare you, and you don't want someone to talk down to you.
Mhm.
And that's kind of how I approached it.
Understood. It's great. And I have to say, I have not read the book, but I have read many reviews. And also, I'm very interested in reading it now as someone who's also had 24 week or 24 6 days. But this person did this. I just wanted to share because I just think it's a lovely review. Melissa Harris has perfectly captured life in the NICU, where you hold your breath for every life-threatening event averted, for every quarter of oxygen gained, for every breath your baby takes on its own. And I just thought, I mean, that is just captures everything when you're in the NICU. It's just, it's this, everyone, it's a roller coaster. Yeah, it's a roller coaster, but the better way, it sucks and it's great, and it sucks and it's great. And, and I use a lot of hand sanitizer and I wash my hands. Like that is definitely it. And journaling, I mean, you did a form of journaling, which a lot of people in our preemie, like we've asked the preemie community, what would you share with parents currently in the NICU? And they said, a lot of them said journal, journal, journal.
Absolutely. I mean, it was for me, I think it allowed me to go in every day and face the day, because I could kind of put on this rose-colored glasses, this happy face, and take everything in. And then journaling would let me process it and work out the emotional side, so that I could, when I was there, I was present and I wasn't consumed by anything other than he's going to be fine.
Yes.
And I would get home and be like, oh my God, he's not going to be fine. I'd work it out. And then the next day I would go back and do it all again.
Yes.
And it was, I mean, for me, it was vital.
I agree. Yes. No, it's great. And we have a couple people who have shared, including our founder. So I'm going to bring that one up real quick. I wrote poems, helped me cope during my journey, and continue to write poems to this day. So many ways to help us find ways to process our journey, which is very true. Very, very true.
Yeah. I mean, it's just, it can overwhelm easily, very, very easily. And finding ways to process it is so important, so that you don't, when your baby comes home, you're not a shell of a person.
Very true. Very true. And I'm just going to switch the pictures up so people can read that. And as also I've seen, so apparently people are sharing funny stories. Here's one right here. Well, Dad asked about he pooped and peed in the bath, which was funny. Yes, that does happen.
More times than I think any of us like to admit, I think.
Yeah, no, totally. In fact, this was because my twins are 10 years old, and I don't think we had like a digital camera. We still brought disposables to take pictures while in the NICU.
Yeah.
And we came in, and apparently it was like this, it looked like a 3-ring circus, and not like everything was on fire, but there was a nurse who hadn't gotten a chance to get a glove and was like holding one of my children's rears, because, sometimes I take the diaper off and it's just like a free-for-all.
Oh, God.
And this kid, God love him, not going to name names, this one said he pooped and peed, launched it outside the isolette and onto the floor.
Well, it made the cleaning of the bedding easier that way. I mean, it was kind of courteous.
The nurse tried to stop it, and she didn't realize she didn't have a glove on.
That's unfortunate. Yeah.
I mean, that's something that parents go through. The poor nurse, like the next day I made sure there were flowers there when we brought them. Like, I'm so sorry. But they all thought it was hilarious. And actually, these poor kids, when we do visit, they were born at UCLA Santa Monica. That same nurse brings it up sometimes. We haven't seen her in a while, but yeah.
I would hope so, actually. Yeah. I think they've earned that.
Yeah. So were there any comical stories in your NICU?
In the NICU,
things get intense.
Yes. Yeah. I think for me, I mean, it's comical now. Probably in the moment, not so much. But my favorite NICU story of all actually comes from a friend that I met in the NICU. And I met her probably on Sam's 3rd day of life.
Mhm.
And she was there. She was P-Prom at 19 weeks and had been on bed rest for 89 days in the hospital. And her preemie was born at 31 weeks and had
Mhm.
more lung issues. And she also had a second child that is the exact same age as my daughter.
Mhm.
And so, we're in the family room taking a break and you size each other up quickly. And it's like, all right, I think this one's not insane. We start talking. And I was telling her about my son. And because she had been on bed rest for 89 days, she had read everything possible on preemies. And I knew nothing, nothing.
Mhm.
And she's like, this is a 24-weeker. Oh, this kid's oh, well, this is not good. And I said, do you want to come meet him? And she's like, oh, sure. She said she went and looked in the isolate and, oh, he's beautiful. And we talked. And then she tells me she went home that night and said, I met the stupidest person today. She has no idea that her baby might die. I mean, I don't know. And I think about this now, and it's like, yeah, I probably was totally oblivious. But
Mhm.
I just love the way she described it. She's like, she was nice, but ooh, I worry about her sometimes. And we're still friends to this day, I should say. But
Yeah.
but that's the thing with the NICU is that you're in such a bubble that you don't see, and other people may see it. I appreciate the fact that she didn't tell me that story until years later. But it always makes me laugh now when I think back on it, because I was like, come meet my baby.
Mhm. Yeah.
And she's like, okay,
Yeah.
I'll do that. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's sometimes it's hard to find humor in the NICU. You do find those little moments, even if it's later, because what is comedy is
Right.
time plus tragedy. Yeah, that's one of the things. I've made a few friends while in the NICU when, as you say, you size each other up to figure out like, well, are we relatable given what we're going through? But I think the funniest thing is because sometimes full term babies end up in the NICU because they have an apnea issue or there's just something that they've deemed that they're overnight for 1 or 2 nights. And we were 5 monthers in the NICU, so we saw people come and go all the
Yeah.
time.
Oh,
And
yeah.
there were 2 or 3 families that we were all sort of there for the same amount of time, and we're still friends. But I remember this one baby came in and he had an apnea issue, so he was only in for 2 days, which for them, I'm sure was very much like a stressful thing. For us, we're like, 2 days, I wish I had that. Everyone's got a different journey.
Yes.
But he was full term. So he was over 8 pounds. My twins, one was 1 pound, 8.5 ounces, and the other one was 1 pound, 12 ounces. And that baby looked like he ate a preemie because and we were just like, is he and they put him on the end. So we called him the bouncer of our little ward because he was just so big, and technically he's normal. It's just that your idea of everything has been skewed because you've had a preemie.
I called those the baby that ate the preemie. And
Yeah.
and you come in and you're like, oh, short termer, long termers, it's like,
Yeah.
it's horrible to say prison, but it is like prison where you got the long time, the lifers, and then the short termers, and you all kind of size each other up and try not to judge, but you sometimes find yourself going, could you stop crying? You've been here for a day and you're leaving tomorrow. I need you to stop. But
everyone has the different journey. I know it's hard at the time. Like you say, it's hard at the time in the NICU because you do get those feelings of just like, you're going to be out in 2 days. Why are you this upset? But you're not, that's their journey, not yours. Or you watch people come and go. We saw 3 sets of triplets go through the NICU, come and go. We were still there. And you just like, you look and you're like, we're going to be here forever. Like, this is our home now. I should just adjust to cafeteria food.
Oh no.
And yeah.
I know my 2 worst days. One involved Sam, which was awful, but my worst day, I actually got kicked out by the nurses because I went down to the cafeteria to get my regular salad and they didn't have kidney beans to put in the salad. And I decided that was it. And I came back up to the NICU and I was such a brat that one of the nurses looked at me and she said, I've had it. You have to leave. Because I was mean to everyone. And it was because I didn't have kidney beans. I think it was on day like 80 and I was just over it. And they kicked me out and told me I needed to go home and come back with a better attitude. Luckily, I love these nurses. And so this is how we talk to each other, but it cracks me up now. But it was like, I'm not being a brat. And like, no, you're being a brat and you got to go. You're not helping anyone here today.
It's good that they can recognize that and be as frank, because sometimes some nurses can't, and that's probably that was needed at the time.
It was, because I was not being helpful. I mean, I can reflect back on it now and realize I was probably in the way more than anything else, because anyone would come in and be like, what do you want today? It's like, well, I'm the respiratory therapist, so I thought I would check on him. Whatever, you know.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Yes. And if anyone who's out there listening and wants to comment, please do so. If you have any questions for Melissa about her book, that would be great as well. Real quick, let's see. Oh, yes. And we have, how we compared and judged others during our NICU journey. We do have one that I want to recognize because, but it just because I think just because this, and I don't know who the person is, but Haley, her name was Haley Landfield, and she was born in 2013, but she passed in 2016. She was in the NICU for 63 days. And I just want to recognize that because it was posted, and to acknowledge that, because we're celebrating Parents of Preemies Day. All the preemies that are here, thanks to parents. We also, parents who have lost their preemies are parents.
Absolutely.
And just want to acknowledge that. I don't want to think that person was thinking I was glossing over it. So I would like to ask, what advice after writing this book, and there's a lot of people, I have to put a link in, there's a lot of accolades for this book, so I really think people should go out and buy it. And but what advice would you give to a preemie parent while in the NICU?
So there are a couple key things that, at least for me, is what got me through it. So one is size up people in the NICU and find someone you connect with, because no matter how much your friends and family love you, when they don't get it yet, and another parent in the NICU absolutely gets it. And the friend that I made, she was my lifeline. I mean, she and I would sit in our different parts of the NICU and text each other back and forth, and like, oh, he just had a big, apnea event. I'd write back, oh, how bad was, it was just that there, I didn't need explanation. I needed nothing. We just were there to listen. And that was really huge. The next is to find the right primary nurse, because that primary nurse who is there, especially the hours that you can be there, is vital. To this day, we still see my son's main primary nurse. She's Aunt Laura, like she is part of the family.
Oh, that's lovely.
Having her there with me during the day, she knew Sam, she knew me, she knew everything, and that continuity of care, but also that primary nurse isn't just taking care of your kid in many ways, they're kind of taking care of you. And she was my people. And that was great. So good friend, good primary, and an outlet, whatever it is. So for me, it was writing. For others, it may be exercise or baking or sewing or whatever it is. Find an outlet so that you don't hold all of this in, because it's, no matter how many days you're in the NICU, it's hard and it is an overwhelming experience, and finding a place to release that is vital.
Definitely.
Those are kind of my three main things, I would say. It's all about self-care.
Yes. And speaking of self-care, how would you say any advice on same for the bed rest, because you were on bed rest for a while as well, which is maddening. I was on bed rest as well. You literally think it's going to be restful and it's not.
Oh, it's awful. I mean, I think for me, because I was tilted back at that 30-degree angle, which made all the blood rush to my head and caused massive headaches and migraines, my only thing was find a way to be entertained. Dating myself a little bit is how I got my first iPad, is because I couldn't watch the TV because I wasn't allowed to move, and I couldn't email or write. And so my now ex-husband went and bought me an iPad, so I at least had something that I could do. Other than that, I'm not sure I'm the best person, because I do not recommend 6 days of Trendelenburg with a magnesium drip to anybody.
It's not fun. I did the same thing, and you couldn't focus. You're like, oh, you couldn't even look at a magazine, not even just to look at pictures. Like you could, because all the smooth muscle, it just like really just relaxes in a way. And you can't focus. You can't look at things. I mean, you're spacey.
It was awful. And then of course you've got the tension of, now don't get stressed because you don't want to get upset because you want to, and you're like, well, that helped. Thank you. I mean, the situation is so comfortable. So
We do have one other question. What would be some self-care throughout the NICU journey, other than getting kicked out of the NICU when you're being crabby?
So things that I did, so I wasn't allowed to drive for the first about month and a half after I had Sam. So I had to have a C-section, which still to this day, I'm like, really? For a pound 12 ouncer? Yeah, okay, fine. And I had an infection that took them a while to finally diagnose. So, I had different friends driving me all the time. And this is more of an advice to friends for self-care is I was kidnapped often by my friends who would insist on taking me to lunch first, or one took me for a 20-minute foot massage before allowing me to go to the NICU. And that was really important because you kind of forget about those things along the way.
Yeah.
I would say, allowing yourself, just forgive yourself for whatever it is. If you just eat a cookie for lunch that day, you eat a cookie for lunch that day. You got other things to worry about.
Yeah.
And then, my self-care was the writing, but maybe it's come home and take a nice bath, or, I had another child at the time. And so I would go and climb into bed with her and read. She was almost 5 when I had my son. And so we would read books together, or just kind of be. And that was a bit of self-care as well. Just spending time with her.
Got it. No, that's great. That's great. Mine was walking around. Like I just had to walk, get out of the hospital for a little bit and whatnot. But no, it was great.
Yeah.
There are 2 quick questions.
Okay.
Nicholas Hall asked, what is your son doing today and what sort of things does he love to do?
Oh, so Sam is great. I'd say from the NICU experience, if you lined him up with his class and said, okay, guys, pick out the former micro preemie, he is not who you would pick out. He is tall and just stocky and great and healthy looking. He's autistic, which I do credit to a little bit of being born early, having his brain form in an unnatural environment. But other than that, he's just amazing. His obsessions are F1 racing and Harry Styles.
Oh.
I have learned a lot about car racing and Harry Styles in One Direction in my parenting of him. I've even seen Harry Styles live to get the Mother of the Year award.
That's great.
He's just remarkable. He's a remarkable kid. And I also have to say my daughter is remarkable, because having a brother born in the way that her brother was born for a girl just going into kindergarten is a huge deal. And she aged up probably earlier than she needed to. And she is a remarkable little rock star. And she is great with her brother.
That's
She's
great.
really a remarkable kid.
That's great. All those things are awesome.
Yeah.
Also, my kids like Formula One, so Oh, and just to everyone out there, we discovered we live in the same area in the East Bay area of Northern California, so now we have to get together. I'm so excited.
I am too. If your kids are Formula One kids, because I can talk to them about that till the cows come home.
Hopefully, he likes Daniel Ricciardo, because he's very popular in our household.
Oh no, we're a Lando Norris house, but we'll find a way to make it work.
We'll all come together and do that. Yes. Yeah. That's hilarious. We've got a couple more shares. I have one person who I think having preemie after children is a particular heartache. Definitely agree with that. Thank you for sharing, Sarah.
Yeah, Sarah, I'd say for me, I went through 2 miscarriages, 9 surgeries. I had a bicornuate uterus we discovered after I had my daughter, and I had to have over 9 surgeries to have that corrected to even possibly have Sam. And when I got pregnant with him, I had made the decision this was the last time I was going to try. And then having him early was awful, because this was it. He was either going to live and I was going to have 2 kids, or he wasn't going to survive and I was never trying again. And it's gut-wrenching.
Yeah. Wow. Very, very powerful. Let me tell you right there.
Yeah.
The next, Amanda, who is a Grams Foundation team member. My oldest is 4 at the time too. I would get home from a long day in the NICU. Bath time playing with dolls was exactly what we both needed. So yeah. So definitely at some point, we won't be able to do it today, but I'd love to have a conversation with you and others that have a child in the NICU while they have a child at home, which is something I couldn't experience. My twins, and that was it. But I would love to hear, how people handled it, self-care, all that stuff.
That for me was one of the harder things. And I know that we're running out of time. I'll just say I was very lucky that I have a cousin who happens to be a child life specialist.
Oh, wow.
Working in a children's hospital. And she sat down with my daughter and kind of figured out what her limits were and helped us. And my daughter and I have actually talked about writing a kids book targeted at, children around the ages of 4 to 7 who are older sibling to a kid in the NICU, to help them, because we did it a lot wrong with our daughter at first, and then my cousin helped us do it all right. It's a hard one.
Yeah. But also what a gift to have a relative who could help you like that, and to be able to get, not that I'm trying to push you to make a book, but what a great thing to give back to other people who are going through it, because I think that is something that's needed.
Yeah. No, because it's so easy to do it wrong, and it's so simple. I mean, the very quick advice I have is what my cousin told me to do is we set up a code word with our daughter. And first off, she had to ask us if she could visit Sam, not the other way around, because if we asked her, she'd of course say yes, because she would think that's what we wanted. And then if she said, I'd like to go see him, this code word was, if she said the word pickles, we would immediately, whoever was with her would immediately take her and leave. No questions, no judgment, no nothing. It was her way of saying, I've seen enough. And it took, once we set that up, it took her about 3 or 4 weeks to ask to come see him. She was there for about 2 minutes, said pickles, and her dad immediately went, let's go get ice cream. Took her and left. And that allowed her over time to want to come a little bit more, because she knew it was on her own terms. And that was all my cousins doing. And that's really was vital.
That is great. And we're definitely going to have some follow-up. So, because I mean, what that you just, that's more information than I had before. Now I'm like, we're going to have more talks. I'm sure there's a lot of people out there who would be very interested. And just to share, to hear your experiences and share theirs, to see, best practices sounds wrong. That's what it kind of feels like how to help while in the NICU, especially when you have kids at home.
Yeah.
And integrating them. So
absolutely.
Yeah. That is amazing. I don't think we have any more questions. Sarah did say, thank you for sharing. Our mic was last embryo, last possible. So thank you again, Sarah, for sharing that with us and the community. Does anyone have any questions for Melissa who's listening in? It's always, that's the one thing I'm like, because we have had that, the last one, people ask questions, but after the fact, after I ended, and I felt horrible, but I just want to make sure, because I think there's a delay. I think there's a 6-second delay with the comments. It's going to give it, we have a couple minutes left before next.
All I can say is, just in case anyone's interested on the book, is the book is broken into 3 parts. Part 1 is about sort of the struggle to get to Sam. So talking about my secondary infertility and kind of the struggles there. The book is the NICU experience. It's very raw. It's very honest, at times funny, at times not, kind of what we went through. And then I follow, the book ends at Sam's first birthday with a letter that I wrote to him on his first birthday. So chronicle it through there.
That's great. And just so you know, I put the link for Barnes and Noble, but I realize there's multiple. Is there one you actually prefer people to reach out for that book?
Well, seeing as yesterday was Independent Bookstore Day, because the book is published, any bookstore can order it. So, I'm a big fan of supporting your local independent bookstore. So I'd say go into any local store and just ask for it, and they can order it for you if they don't have it.
Okay, everyone heard that. You want to get 1 pound, 12 ounces, which we'll bring up again, by Melissa Harris, and you can get it at any of your independent local bookstores.
Yep.
Or if you don't, if for some reason you're on a mountain and Amazon is what works for you, it is on Amazon.
It is on Amazon. There's also bookshop.org, which is independent bookstore type online bookstore. But the way I like to put it is wherever books are sold.
That works as well too.
Yeah.
Melissa, thank you so much for joining us and sharing your experience and your book. And I look forward to not only coffee with you, but also maybe another one of these live chats for our community. It was wonderful. Thank you very much.
No, thank you very much. And I really appreciate what the Grams Foundation does. So thank you.
Thank you. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
All right. Bye.
Okay. And now we're going to bring in our next preemie parent. Her name is Michelle Armstrong. She created this wonderful company called Finn & Company, and I'm going to add her right now. Hello, Michelle.
Hello, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Good. That was really great to listen in on Melissa. What an experience.
Yeah, no, it was amazing. And I'm so glad you're able to join us as well.
Yeah, having me.
I'm going to let you talk, but Michelle just to preface it, Michelle is a preemie parent, and from her preemie experience, she created a wonderful product. So if I can call it a product or I don't,
Yeah.
I'm going to let you talk now.
Okay. You've been going, I understand. Hello, my name is Michelle Armstrong. I am the mom of 3 boys, and my second son, Finn, was born premature at 32 weeks. I had HELP syndrome, and had an emergency C-section, didn't know what was going on. I was already in care for placenta previa, was already scheduled for a C-section at 36 weeks, so was kind of wrapping my mind around that. And then one day just started to feel a little funny, which turned into going into the hospital and them telling me if we didn't get our baby out immediately, we both weren't going to make it. So he came, and I got better. I had several blood transfusions, but was in the hospital for about 5 days, and then Finn remained for 57 days.
Mm-hmm.
A little bit longer stay for a 32-weeker. There was other 32-week boys there that were going home before us, and that was hard to see. But just because of how poorly my body had been doing towards the end there, he was doing worse, and breathing was definitely his biggest struggle. We did get to come home a week after his due date, and then 4 months later, we were back in the ICU with the dreaded RSV. We went in, we were in the ICU, then we got sent home, and then we had to rush him back into the ER that night because he wasn't breathing, and then we got another week-long stay in the ICU. And we also returned to the hospital for a surgery later on as well. So through those experiences, I know a lot of preemie parents know the feeling of guilt through it, and I didn't have it as much with the early delivery because I kind of, I realized something was happening in my body that I had no control over. But with the RSV, I had a lot of guilt because I felt like it was my job to protect him from that, and I didn't do it. And I've since really encouraged parents that, we can do everything. We could put them in a bubble and something could happen and they can still get it. So while easier said than done, that guilt doesn't really serve us at all. And so I knew I needed to kind of direct my thoughts somewhere else and not be put in that cyclical loop of feeling bad. And so that's when I got the idea to do something that would help other families in the NICU. And I came up with the idea for Finn the Panda. Enter Finn the Panda. And he puts together my personal observations of being a NICU mom mixed with then when I got home doing the research to back it up. So a lot of moms are probably familiar with the scent patch. So you can put like a breast pad, or they have those heart cloths. You wear them around and then can put them into the baby's incubator or in their crib so that they can smell you. I would do that, but sometimes it would get scooped up with a diaper change or fall on the floor, and of course they had to throw it away. So this is a cloth one, and it reattaches to the bear, and it can kind of like hang. This is how a lot of moms do it, so that it doesn't get scooped up, but baby can smell you. And then we all know that they can hear our voices when they're in the womb, and that's a comforting sound for them. So he has a recording device that records up to 1 minute. And then you can play it back once or on repeat, and this will just keep playing until you hit stop. So when I was there, I memorized a specific song for each of my kids. I picked a lullaby that it wasn't real popular, hadn't known, and this one was one by Mr. Rogers. And the nurses and physical therapists noticed that every time I sang it, no matter what they were doing with him, that his heart rate would slow and he would calm down. And so anytime I was there, I would get close up next to him and sing to him. But by the end of it, when you're rooming in, and he's, a newborn who's having trouble sleeping through the night, my voice got so hoarse that I recorded it on my phone and just put it by him so that he could go back to sleep. So that's where I got the idea for the recording device. And then he's a panda. He's black and white to appeal to babies' early vision. And he comes with an antimicrobial treatment to prevent the spread of germs. And when he arrives, he's in a closed package so that he doesn't come in contact with other people and germs. So when I got home from the hospital and I had this experience and also experienced that mom guilt, one for him getting sick again, but also every time you had to leave, you and Melissa were talking briefly about when you have another child at home, it's really hard. I had a 2-year-old and I had just quit my job and my husband had just started a business. So we were very much taking turns going back and forth. Thankfully, we had family to help us out to care for our older son. But we also wanted to be with him too. He was at a very tender age. So even though we weren't there all the time, there were things like the NICU cameras where we would have him on our TV at all times to feel closer to him. And that helped us. And I wanted this to be a gift to both the baby for comforting and bonding, but also for the parents to know that a part of them is always with their baby, even when they can't physically be there. It just so happened that the research had already been done to back up what I had seen firsthand. So in 2016, PMC Pediatrics did a study on the recording of mom's voice in premature babies. It showed better sleep, better Griffith scores. I have all the things here, greater auditory cortex growth, better visual attention, neurofunction, and earlier use of 2-word sentences. Infants and mothers who sang to them daily had higher oxygen saturation levels, fewer negative critical events, and that was all from a recording. So, obviously being there in person is the ideal, and those things that we can do for our babies, even though we may not have a medical degree, we're still a healing power for them and a comforting power to help their growth and development and healing process. And the smell of breast milk study showed that it works as a natural pain reliever. So just like kind of the sugar water and things that they use, there's no negative effects, but they smell it and it's a natural pain reliever. And then obviously the black and white, they've shown that compared to other colors, like bright colors or neutral colors, they'll stay 8 times longer. And that extended visual time helps their retinal growth, which we know is important for preemies especially, as well as their brain development. So basically tried to come up with something that took all those pieces that as much as you could give a little baby without physically being able to hold them and be there with them, to leave your smell and your sound and something for them to look at and engage with them. So that is Finn the Panda. This is my 3rd son's name. I do little custom names on the hearts on my website. So that's why it says Victor.
I love it. I mean, that's an amazing story, not only just for what you went through, but how you took that and turned into something that can benefit others. And from what I gather, it's not just obviously for preemie kids. It's for kids who are just having to be in a hospital stay or in the PICU or ICU. So it kind of covers all ages in a way. I mean, I would.
It really at our local hospital here, Sacred Heart, they order them and they give them out to anybody who could use them. And a friend of mine, actually, who I hadn't met him yet, but his son, who is like a preteen, like 12 or 13 years old or something like that, he has a lower emotional level. And so he was getting really anxious with the procedure that they needed to do. And one of the nurses said, "Hey, get him a Finn the Panda." And his dad sang into it and he got to hold it and be with it while he had to go into a room to do some tests by himself. And my friend told me it was a huge comfort to him. And so, it goes across ages. It also something, obviously not every baby who's in the NICU is a preemie, but also for my son, when we had to return for things like even chest x-rays, it was like Finn the Panda would go first and get the x-ray, and then Finn the child would go as kind of test it out on him first so I can make sure it's not as scary as it looks. And Now my 7-year-old likes to use it to make songs about farts and stuff.
It's the gift that keeps giving, quite
It really
frankly.
does.
You know what I
And
mean?
it is good for like, when we've left them on date nights and stuff like that, I can record their favorite lullaby on there and leave it for the sitter to use and that kind of thing.
That's great. I mean, really just such a great product. And just also with the sort of the studies behind it showing just proves everything that you observed. That, I mean, most probably preemie parents observe as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it's great. What was I going to ask? Also, I was going to ask what, other than Finn, you also offer other items on your website, Finn & Co. Gifts, which I believe is it onesies and swaddles.
Yeah, we have a couple things. We have a little premature size, organic, honest brand onesie that we put Brave, Strong, Loved on, and there's a rainbow swaddle on there. And we're kind of playing with ideas for other things. I feel like, the babies in the hospital, they're getting the care that they need. And a lot of where my heart is at is supporting the parents so that they can better be there for their babies. And so gifts that, have some encouragement to them. We just sold out of our bracelets that said, "You got this." And we're looking at something else for that. I have a t-shirt idea that just for the parents to have a little bit of encouragement. And I think so many people, when you have a baby in the hospital, don't really know what to do to help or what to say or how to show support. It can be very uncomfortable for people. And I know, our family was a huge support to us, but none of them had experienced anything like this. We came from a family of, all the moms did home births and nobody ever had anything go wrong. And so for us to have kind of one thing after another, we felt very much on the outside, and they wanted to help, but they hadn't experienced anything like that. And so didn't really know how to. And that's when I started looking more into what is out there to show support, what's out there that you can give as a gift that celebrates the baby, because it is a life in this world that we want to celebrate, but also is sympathetic to their situation, that not everything is glorious on those days when your baby's in the hospital. So that's kind of another piece of it, of just having something that people can do to support the parents and hopefully help relieve some of that guilt or hardship of needing to be there every minute.
Understand. That's great. Since you had a kid a baby in the NICU and kids at home, what would be your piece of advice for sanity for yourself?
Yeah, ours was different. James, my older son, he was, like I said, only 2, so he wasn't allowed in the NICU, which was really hard because, you're 2, first of all, and then you hear that you have a baby brother, but you can't see him, and you've never met him. So we had him on TV a lot. And some of the best advice I got in the NICU was from another NICU mom. I tell this story that she was like the Disney princess of the NICU. She always came to, the doors that you waited to get in a dress and her hair done and her face done. And just, there could have been birds singing behind her as she came through. And I was always like slumping through with my sweat still on and like barely awake. And one day I asked our nurse, what's this girl's deal? Like, why is she so happy and good? And she's like, I don't know, but she's not faking it. Like, she's literally like that all the time. So I asked if she would ask her if she'd come and talk to me. And she did. And this was her second son in the NICU. So she'd experienced it before. And, she said, "Can you believe how fortunate we are that we get to sit here and hold our second child all day long? Most moms having their second are still chasing after a toddler and not getting this alone time." And I was just thinking to myself, like, nope, hadn't thought of that, hadn't had that gratitude. So she just had a different way of looking at it. And she said the biggest thing that helped them was having a schedule. So she did treat it like a job in the way of she would get up in the morning, she would do her thing, eat her breakfast, get dressed, get herself ready. And, whatever that is for you, for me, it never was doing my hair and makeup, but just to feel a little bit better, more awake, more alive. And she had her time that she would go, and then she'd go home and she'd have dinner with her older son and put him to bed. And then her husband would go and do a few hours before he went to bed at night. So they made sure that they still had their little family dinner together, that they had some normalcy for their son. And we started to integrate that. We thankfully had family around to help with care of him during the day while I was sitting at the NICU. And then we just got that schedule of, okay, here's our expectation of how much time we're going to be able to be at the hospital. Because if you don't set that up, it literally feels like you should be there every minute, right? It's your child. You don't want to leave them. But to say, okay, these are the hours I'm with Finn, and I'm going to fully be here while I'm with him, and I'm going to hold him, and I'm going to sing to him, and I'm going to read to him. And then these are the hours I'm at home and I'm with James, and we're going to have dinner together, and we're going to try to laugh together, and we're going to talk about Finn, but I'm being with James. And so setting up that schedule and making those pockets of time to be with him was really important. And then we still tried to, Finn was in the hospital through a summer. And so we tried to each, once a week, usually like Saturday or Sunday, one of us go and take James to do something, go to the lake or the playground or something, just to have some time with him. And then I remember the night before we brought Finn home from the NICU, we did a family dinner, just the three of us, as our last little dinner as a family of three before we brought Finn home. And, kids are so resilient and they adapt so well. And even though it was a really hard time, how much he really understood what was going on, I don't know. But enough that, when his brother came home from the hospital, he was excited, and he was excited that we thought he wasn't going to be going back. And he also had some time with, his grandma and his aunts and his uncles that, was really special. And Will has a kind of closer relationship with them because of that. So, and asking for help, I think, is the biggest thing, because, we're moms, so we're kind of trained to do it all. But man, if ever I've said, yeah, I'll take the meal, I'll take the grocery run, I'll take the childcare, anything anybody was willing to do. And when they asked, I made sure I had a list of things, pick one.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. The whole "I'm fine, but not fine," I think is very common in the NICU, or just any mom who's tired. So but that's great. Did I have anything else? You kind of covered everything in that thing. I was like, oh, I don't have to ask that question now. You're very thorough.
I'm good. Just going.
Just keep going. It's totally fine. Totally fine. I don't know. We haven't had any questions about Finn, but I am going to put it in the comments. If you are interested, that's not what I want to do, but there it is again. If you're interested in buying or just more information about Finn the Panda and the other lovely things that Michelle has, you can look it up here at finandcogifts.com. Bring you back here. That's better. But yeah, like I told Melissa and you as well, I'd love to have a follow-up conversation at some point, one of these months, to talk about the whole process of having a baby in the NICU, but also having kids at home and managing that, and expectations, and how to help kids process that journey that they're having experience, seeing their sibling or not seeing their sibling for a while and trying to understand it. So that would be an interesting one to have down the line.
Yeah.
If you're interested.
Absolutely. I think, like I said, the baby gets the attention it needs, obviously. I think mom is next. Everybody is kind of paying attention to helping mom. And so also considering those other people, like mom's partner, her husband or partner, and other children. My husband had just felt like he needed to be strong for us. And it wasn't until after the fact that he had to do a lot of processing and healing from that trauma. And I think sometimes, we forget about the other people impacted by these experiences. And so I like to always shed some light on, supporting the family-centered care. I was just meeting with a hospital yesterday and talking about how vital that is, and that part of my heart behind the Finn the Panda was also that parents would be handed him like right when you're entering the NICU, and you have no idea what to do. You don't know how to participate. You don't know how to take care of this baby, but here's this gift that tells you you're important, that you're needed in this process, and that even when you can't physically be here, that will make a part of you be a part of the process. That when we're changing the diaper and you're not here, we'll bring the panda close and play your voice and help them to feel empowered to take care of their baby in the NICU, because it is so scary and overwhelming. And anything can help.
Great. One quick question. I have a comment. Question came from, where is the panda made?
Right now, the first one was made in China. This is a few years old. We're down to our last ones, and then we're looking at actually Canadian production for the second round. And we're looking at 2 more animals too. So if people have an opinion on that, I want to stick with the black and white, but we're looking at maybe a zebra and a penguin.
Ooh, penguins. My vote is penguin.
It's so funny. My dad's favorite animal was penguin. So
I absolutely love penguins
too. They're so cute.
I absolutely love penguins.
And we're looking at a Canadian manufacturer next. But yeah.
Oh, very cool. And then the one comment that you're telling about, you sang the lullabies, whatever. I'm assuming you might have a decent voice.
No, I don't.
So, because I have a similar story, I guess, to share. I did back in the day. It took a while before I was allowed to hold either of my preemies, just because they were born so young and whatever. And they said it was very important to sing to them and talk to them. And you're just so distraught, it's very hard. So I think the recording thing is just so much better, because when you do get that moment of calm, even if you're freaking out, but you could record something as opposed to write in the moment where your hormones are everywhere, emotions are everywhere, you're exhausted, you're scared. Like when you get that moment, that's a great way to do that, because I couldn't think of any songs to sing. I only could think of 2. One was the Itsy Bitsy Spider, because it's about a spider that didn't give up, and I thought that was good. And the other one was Foo Fighters' Home, and I would just certain parts of it I would sing. And what's funny is when they finally allowed us to bring in like a little recording, not of me singing, but of the song. Like they noticed the kids would, like you said, it would react, like their blood pressure would drop. Or Thomas, my son, would turn and kind of look like I hear it. And I was like, oh my God, he knows the song. And my husband would joke like, oh no, he now hears it in key. So it sounds good. And I'm like, thanks.
And we do have something for that if you're not comfortable singing or reading or talking into the bear. On my website, you can go to, I think it's the facts page, and it's a friend of mine who's in a band called Mountains in the Sea, and she just sings Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star.
That's
but
adorable.
It's a high-pitched melodic voice, which they say is what babies like the best.
In here,
And so you can, play it on your computer and hold the bear up to it to record it. And there's also instructions on there how to use a downloaded decibel app, so that you can make sure after you record it, then set it next to your phone and run the decibel app, and you can make sure that it's not too high for the baby's gestation.
Got it.
So in micro preemies, you don't even want to use the recording. Then as they get to more like 27, 28 weeks, I think, then there's the lowest decibel. It's almost like a whisper, and then it can move up from there, and it has the different levels that you'd want it to be at for that purpose.
Okay, your product keeps getting more and more genius and so well thought out. So that is just great. And it looks like, I know we need to wrap up soon, but one more question. Nicholas has a follow-up question. Have you encountered any challenge talking to NICUs about the Panda, if any? I'm assuming that's also because of the pandemic. That question might have come up.
Yeah, that was really challenging. So I've been doing this. My son will be 5 this June. So I've been doing this for 4 years. And it has been a challenge through the pandemic. Like they just kind of stopped bringing in anything. We donate a lot to our, not bears necessarily, but swaddles and different things. And they just weren't taking anything through the pandemic. Now we're not having as much trouble. But we have had things like if the baby, like I said, lower gestational age, or they just won't allow anything in the crib, But what they've worked out is, they set it aside, like with all their other stuff, and bring them down for diaper changes, cares, those kinds of things. So have specific times. Another thing, I don't know if the hospital you're at had cuddlers or if you called them something like that, but volunteers that could come hold the baby.
Yeah.
When that was allowed pre-COVID, like when I was there were a lot of cuddlers who didn't have anything to be doing because none of the babies could be held at that time, or all the moms were there, dads were there. But there'd be a baby crying and the nurse would be busy with another baby. And so now the cuddlers can go around and at least press play and kind of help soothe the baby that way. So it's a simple tool that it doesn't have to be operated by the nurse or the doctor. Anybody can go in and do that. So that's been another way that they've integrated it during these higher restriction times.
Got it. That's great. Personally, I want a Panda just for myself, but I want Matthew McConaughey to like record stuff and help me go to sleep. I'm
sure you can find that online.
No, I want the Panda, but I want Matthew McConaughey's voice on it. So we're going to have to make this happen.
Yeah, you could get that car commercial and record him talking about the cars.
All right. Yes. Well, this has been great, Michelle. I so appreciate you taking the time to speak to our community and just talk about what a great product that came from Prematurity, basically. And we'd love to have you on again, just to talk more.
Well, thank you very much for having me. I love everything you guys are doing, and
thank you.
Appreciate the work and the support. And I wish I would have been more in tune or on social media, whatever I was missing to find people like you when I was there. So thank you for everything you do.
No. Thank you for everything you do. I mean, we can go back and forth, but again, people, Finn the Panda, it's adorable. Maybe show it one more time because I know it's in your hand. Adorable. But yes, and I guess happy Parents of Preemies Day. Didn't point that out since you are a preemie parent. So everything you've done for your kids. And I guess we will end this and talk again soon. Have a great evening.
Thanks, Nicole. You too.
Okay. All right. Bye-bye.